do you have any idea why this was so important that it be built at that time, even though you?
Well, the studies were saying that that it made sense, and I think it did. I think if the upstream storage had been done at the same time from strictly engineering and economics point of view, it would have worked as it has worked from an engineering and power generation point of view.
Okay.
It's one of the biggest, I think it's probably the biggest project ever undertaken in the country. And in fact, it is the project that has, I don't think I'm pretty sure no other project in the country has had so much environmental studies associated with it. So out of the project, we have learned a lot in terms of geology and hydrology and lots of things we have learned. I think the volume of knowledge resulting from the project has been tremendous. And rightly so, because like I said, it is a serious undertaking, right? But that's what happened. After Malian was built, it was generating something like an average of 77 gigawatt hours per year. We were on hook for 120 gigs per year, whether or not the plant can produce it. So and the price was about 9 cents US per kilowatt hour,
so
which is 18 cents Belize. So effectively, even though the price is 18 cents Belize, because we were only getting not a little more than half of the power, the true cost of it was going to be like 34 cents Belize, unless we had built the upstream storage.
So just so I understand this correctly, you're saying that you were required to purchase 120 million kilowatt hours. Right. That was your threshold. But the plant was only producing 77
on average.
And whether or not it produced more,
yeah,
or less,
the minister's position was that you, government, said you were going to build the storage, and if the storage was there, this plant would have been producing it.
I see. Okay. So essentially what you're saying is...
So we got the government to blame, right?
I don't want to blame anybody.
Well, no, I mean, it's not a question of...
it's easy for us to see now and say they should have done things differently. And I suppose it's easy to look at things that we are doing right now. And yes, some people might look back and say, oh, you could have done it differently, right? My view on the whole thing is that you make your best judgments based on information you have at the time, you know, and you move forward, right? So that's what happened there. It became pretty obvious that if we don't build the storage, the plant would not be able to deliver the amount of power that it was supposed to produce. So when that happened, again, the government got involved, and the government was trying to get Dominion Energy. By that time, they had sold to Duke to build the upstream storage.
But this is... The plant, the Chalillo, was commissioned in 2005.
Yes.
Malian was completed in 1995.
Yes.
So from 1995 to 2005, we were paying for capacity.
Oh, no, we renegotiated the agreement. Because we were back and forth, and they said they needed a minimum amount of money to be able to service their loans, etc.
Okay.
So what we did, we renegotiated with them. I said, listen, the government doesn't have the funds right now to build the upstream storage. They need some time. So why don't we drop the price, or forget the take or pay for now, and we'll give you back on the back end, so that after a certain time, the price for power from Malian is escalated at 1.5% per year.
Okay.
Right? And in fact, when you do the present value of the streams, if you do your economics, it's just about equivalent.
Could I ask you just, is it just 1.5% per year just for the Moyahong or for the Chalillo as well?
For
all power generated on the...
for the first 100 gigs, 1.5%. Anything above the 100 gigs is a flat 5 cents US per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
But the Chalillo project itself generates about, I think it's about 40 gigs from Chalillo itself. The rest of the increase comes from the fact that Malian can operate
at a higher capacity.
So, just to put this then in some perspective, when Malian was commissioned, what % of our energy was supplied by that facility?
About 20%.
20%?
Yes.
Okay.
And right now we are up to about 40 to 45%. Right. But that's because the load has grown too.
Right.
Because when Malian was averaging 177, with Chalillo, we are averaging 177 gigawatt hours. So we've increased the hydro output by 100 gigs, by more than double, right? But it hasn't doubled the percentage because the load, the amount of load has grown also.
And what % was forecasted for Malian?
Moleon, well, they're expecting it to do 120 gigawatt hours, which probably
Would be
about
about
30% or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of the day, you had this plant, you needed storage, and
Yeah.
we had to move.
The government could do it, they only have the money to do it. So the government basically tried to get Duke to do it. I'll tell you something, they agreed to do it at first.
Who did?
Duke.
Okay.
Duke Energy, they agreed to do it at first, and we thought everything was going to work. And they were going to charge us 5 cents just for the extra power from over 100. We kind of had things worked out. And then, I don't know what happened, but apparently, I think they got kind of scared of the environmental movement. And they suggested to us, listen, why don't you guys do it and we'll buy it from you when it's finished. Government said, no, we can't do that, you know. They came to Fortis, suggested that to Fortis, and Fortis said, no, we have no interest in doing that. We'll buy the power if you go ahead and do it. But for you to suggest we build a plant and then that's not the way we do business. So after all the back and forth, the government suggested to Fortis, well, why don't you buy the plant from Duke, the Moleon plant, and do the project. So that's when Fortis said, well, if the government is willing to back the project, we'll do our studies, and if it makes economic sense, and we get the environmental approvals, then yeah, we'll do it. So that's how Fortis ended up buying the Becal plant.
Okay.
So it was really, I suppose that's part of the, you know, the politics is one thing, but you know, Fortis can defend itself. But in some ways, I feel that if a government invites a company in to do something, and then because the politics change, you turn around and kick them and say, hey, then that you know, I think.
So there was a lot of pressure on the government to
difficult.
actually come through and produce the goodies as far as getting the environmental compliance moved
you know, that's a part of the challenge back then. I think, you know, the foreign company coming in was saying, listen, we are willing to do this as long as it's environmentally acceptable and it's economically sound. The challenge is who decides whether or not it's environmentally acceptable. In their view, it is the people of Belize to decide whether or not the environmental trade-offs are acceptable.
Right.
And then, of course, there was NIAC, which is the government body that was supposed to determine that. And you know the whole story, it went to court and all that, right? Yeah, everybody will have an opinion. I'm not...
So what we're going to do is take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll discuss the environmental issues a little bit more. Be right back.